How to access your higher self. Why you must connect to your higher self to reach 5D. How to download your 5D godlike powers that you already have from your higher self. Hi, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and I'm here to share with you some very powerful, hopefully inspirational information that I believe we all need. I hope you had a good full moon yesterday. The 7th, the 6th and the 7th actually was when the full moon was. And I had a very, very powerful experience, which is what's inspiring me to talk about what I'm going to share with you today. And I want to give you the tools to do what I have been doing, which is downloading into my 3D self the 5D godlike understandings of my higher self. And of course, before we go any further, this is a channel of tools, not just here to talk. Just listening to me talk is great, but you need to have tools to actually manifest what we're talking about. Thunderwizard.com is the highest, most powerful energy meditative practice that I believe has ever existed, and I'm making it available to you. Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. Courses.thunderwizard.com. Of course, we have my books. Interdimensional Revolution is my latest one, which you can get on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. You can go to audiobooks.thunderwizard.com to get that. Today, we're going to be talking about some things that you can achieve doing interdimensional meditation, which is part of the Lightning Qigong practice. We'll talk more about that. Let's get into today's topic: how to access your higher self, why you must connect with your higher self to be able to reach 5D, and how to download your 5D godlike powers from your higher self that already exists, that you already have. So, what if I told you that your higher self is not some ethereal sort of vapor that hangs around above your head, that is like, it's not you, it's just sort of like this reflection that's sort of, it's like this echo of yourself, this higher echo. What if I told you that's not your higher self? That is an understandable misconception. I myself had that. That's why I'm describing it that way. And what I've come to find out is that everything is completely backwards from what I intuitively thought. You know, we're in the third dimension. We avatar ourselves here. You know, we incarnate. We're actually an avatar of higher aspects of ourself. We come here and we put all of our attention basically like, you know, if you have like a spear, and the tiniest microscopic point of that spear would be the third dimension, but you're actually deeply far back into much higher dimensional vibrations. That's where you really are. But all of your attention is here in this tiny little three-dimensional reality. And one of the illusions of the third dimension is this feeling of isolation. And this feeling like we are in reality. I mean, you think about that. Human beings, the essence of being a human being is that you're born and you die. So how is it that we think that 3D, our experience of 3D, is real reality? And when people die, they sort of go off into this empty sort of mist like, hello. Why is it we think that? It's completely the opposite. The truth is that the experience we have in 3D is actually much less real, much less vivid than what your higher self experiences all the time. It is more real, more intense, you know, than 3D. I mean, there's a reason why. You know, it's so popular now to talk about escaping the matrix, about feeling like we live in a computer program, about feeling like, you know, that we're controlled by these higher beings that only are using us for, you know, their own food, all of that comes from a very real experience that the soul has after it disconnects from its higher self and becomes completely trapped within the sense of 3D, which is isolation. But it is absolutely untrue. The highest use of the third dimension is for your soul to have an experience of being with itself and to be self-empowered. That's what the third dimension is all about, besides just coming down and having a lot of fun. The same way when we go and, we ride go-karts. We know go-karts aren't real cars, but we have a lot of fun with them. We play video games. We know video games aren't real, but we have a lot of fun with them. The soul comes here for that. Mine is surfing and hiking in the woods and whatever else. And your fun is your fun. But on top of that, the soul said, I want to learn how to be empowered within myself. And so you come down here, but unfortunately we get trapped in the denseness of this vibration of the third dimension. So you can tap into your own self. So if you don't like the idea of praying to God, which actually is, the whole idea of religion, of praying to a being that is outside of you, that is outside of creation, that has all of this power, that makes all these decisions for you, and that you have to please. And if you don't please this unseen, separate, narcissistic being, then you get thrown into this place called hell. You don't even get wiped out of existence. You're actually put into torture for eternity. That is the nightmare of the third dimension. So people are worshiping their own nightmares. But the opposite is true. You exist on a much higher plane. And the power that you have, if your higher dimensional self were to manifest fully in the third dimension, what would happen is that a God would appear. So whenever humans have this experience of like this giant deity coming out of the sky, that is, it could be their own higher self. It could be somebody else's higher self. And when you connect directly through interdimensional meditation to your higher self, you will have difficulty accepting how massively powerful you are. You must understand that this experience that you're having right now is a projection onto a 3D hologram. When you become identified with that 3D hologram, it would be like as if you were watching a movie of yourself on a 2D screen. And if you were to all of a sudden become transported to that second dimension and become completely identified with that movie, you wouldn't have any control because the movie's already been planned out. You would think that you were trapped and you were being controlled, because the truth is that you would be. It's a movie that's already been shot, and it's being shot on to a screen. And if you put all of your identity into that, you won't have any power. So this is why you feel powerless in the third dimension, because you are. That part of you that's in the third dimension is completely powerless to change anything. And the only way to overcome that is by connecting to your higher self. Your higher self, which exists in 5D, and your higher self is not, like I said, some ethereal part of you, an echo of you. Your higher self is actually the truest part of you. There is no doubt in your higher self. There is no feeling of disconnected. There is no feeling of isolation. Your higher self is plugged in directly to the infinite power of the multiverse. And right now I'm just talking about your 5D higher self. It's very likely you have higher self going all the way up to 11D. I've had glimpses of my 9th dimensional higher self, and what I was looking at was a god. just like an unbelievably powerful being. Now I come back into my 3D self, and I don't have that experience. I'm just like you. I'm walking around this 3D holographic projection, and limited mobility and limited choices and limited power. But that's an illusion. So what's happening now is all this talk about moving to 5D, all this talk about ascension, is that our three-dimensional selves are going to get an upgrade to a higher dimensional experience where we have access to more of our fifth dimensional self. And we are able to download that. So bear in mind, again, imagine this. This is actually the truth, but for now we'll just pretend it's a fantasy. Imagine that you are an eternal, omnipotent, omniscient God being. And you live in higher dimensions. That's where you spend all of your time. You even can have a physical body. You can live in a physical 5D world, which is going to be very different from 3D, but even more intense and more wonderful. And imagine having the ability, like God walking through the Garden of Eden, to be able to just manifest this, manifest that, create this. You want to experience something, you're magically doing it. You can be in infinite numbers of places. You can be in infinite numbers of timelines, infinite numbers of universes. Just because you imagine it, you experience it, you are the ultimate God that's ever existed. And then imagine that being says, hey, you know what? I want to go down into 3D for a while. And you go down into 3D, and like a really entertaining virtual reality video game, you get totally caught up in it. Just like, when you're watching a movie and you get totally caught up in the story of the movie, you forget who you are. Well, that's what happens. And then imagine if that that omnipotent, godlike being in the third dimension decided to go, you know what? I want to remember my fifth dimensional history, my fifth dimensional self. I want to forget this 3D history that I'm defining myself by. I'm just going to, put that in the recycling bin off my hard drive. And I'm going to remember who I always am, who I always was, and I'm going to bring that power of choice to rewrite this video game. That is what is headed for us. That is what is not just headed for us, it's already here. It's already manifesting. I don't know if you can feel the power of what's going on just from, the full moon that we just had. My physical 3D body is having a hard time integrating all of the power that I've been downloading. So I don't know what it's been like for you, but it's been like that for me. Of course, I've been doing interdimensional meditation like crazy, and I recommend you do the same as well. Thunderwizard.com is where you can find that. But imagine that you did that, and then imagine that you just started rewriting the rules of 3D with your omnipotent, powerful self. Again, erasing all of the history that you had. Bear in mind the history that you think you have in the third dimension. My name is so-and-so. I was born here to Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so. I went to such and such high school. This happened to me. That happened to me. I am this. I'm good at this. I'm bad at that. I've made these mistakes. This person hurt my feelings. That all of that history is a backstory. When you create a character, if you're a writer or if you're an actor, you're a video game developer, you create a character, you have to create a backstory. It's a fictional backstory so that the character has something to interact with in his or her environment. And that's what you have. You have the ability to completely erase your history. I'm getting a huge jolt as I say that, which means my higher dimensional friends are giving me the thumbs up. How would you like that? How would you like, because you're defined by that. The way that your parents treated you, the way that society treated you, the way that kids treated you as you grew up, the way that the world treated you, and your reactions to that from your third dimensional self, that has created not only who you are, it creates how you act and react. It has defined your ability to create your reality. So if you want to have infinite power to create the total, utter, just crazy fantasy world for yourself, you have to get rid of your history. Carlos Castaneda, those books are brilliant. He was a fraud, but like many narcissistic genius frauds, he was actually channeling true reality. And one of the things he taught is you have to erase personal history because it defines you. And the truth is that your personal history it's a fictional backstory that your higher self created so that you could function in 3D and get lost. But the curtain is going up. The performance is over. 3D as we knew it is over. It's over now. It's not like gonna be over. It's over now. The transition is upon us. It is happening to us. Remember that I told you this. What is going to happen? This is now, the date is March 8th here in Australia. Maybe it's March 7th on the West Coast, wherever you are. Remember that I said this. You're going to see, starting now, from this moment, 2023, you're going to see that everything that you saw about physical reality, about the earth, about the narrative, about governments, about humans' abilities, science, spirituality, it is all going to explode in so many different areas. Everything is going to change. So hanging on to your old version of yourself isn't serving you. Now, let me give you the bad news. That's the good news. Everything is going to change. The ascension is here. Everything is going to shift up to the next level, and our history is going to be gone. You don't believe me? Just look at the Mandela effect. One of the things that's happening with the Mandela effect is that history is literally rewriting itself. Black Tom explosion never happened, but you can prove it. The Earth used to be in the Sagittarius arm, now it's in the Orion arm. That is a history that's changing right before our eyes. Kennedy was in a 4-seat, normal sedan, and now history shows him being in a 6-seater. History is changing, so you can change your history as well. So there's no point in holding on to it. But the bad news is you don't have any power to do that from the third dimension. Your experience of the third dimension, most people live entirely from the third dimension. Their entire life is based on their perceived history, which again is a made-up history that you made up in order to function here. And the third dimension, the experience of 3D is a memory. I just snapped my fingers. Even at the moment when I felt my fingers snapping, that nanosecond was actually a memory that my brain was replaying. Just like watching this video, if you were watching this live, there'd be a delay. It had already happened. That's reality. Your brain only records reality after the fact. You cannot, in the third dimension, in the projected experience of reality that's being projected onto that, you can't from within the movie change the movie. You have to go outside of it. You have to pull beyond it. Now, the bad news is you can't do that with your 3D self. Your 3D self is trapped because your 3D self is a projection. So unless you know how to pull back from the third dimension, you'll never be able to change it. You'll never be able. You may intellectually know, because you feel it as I tell it to you, and I've told it to you, and maybe you accept that idea. You intellectually know that your history, your memories of this world are an illusion. They're a fiction. But that intellectual knowledge won't give you the power to change anything. The only thing that will is the ability to go and connect directly to your 5D self. This is what religion has been warping. It's a distortion. Religion that prays to a God outside of this world that has all the power, that's a distortion of what really happens. What really happens is that you surrender your third dimensional self to your higher fifth dimensional self. And that must mean that you have to trust your higher self. All of those of you who believe that there are false beings of light trying to trap you in 3D, stay away from the beings of light. You actually aren't trusting your own higher self. And so you can't change yourself because you don't trust yourself. In the third dimension, you must trust your higher self. And when you experience your higher self, your first experience will feel like some godlike being is downloading itself into you. And that could be very frightening, but it's you. It's your higher essence. I've met one of my higher selves, and it was actually, well, it was a beneficial experience, but it was a little shocking. And what was interesting was because it was like looking in a mirror, but it's another self. Instead of feeling what you would think like, oh my God, I feel so connected to, I was actually a little put off by him because I was projecting my self-hatred onto him. He was really full of himself. He was really cocky. But, when I look back on it, he was actually very kind and very helpful. And all he did is come and give me energy and help me. And then he went off back to wherever he came from. Because he knows me. He knows his third dimensional self. He knows my limitations. He kind of chuckled. He thought it was cute and funny that I was like that. But as I'm starting to work with my my fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, seventh, eighth, ninth dimensional self, I'm getting a glimpse of how incredibly powerful I am. And make no mistake, you are just as powerful as I am. You have a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th dimensional self. And each time you go up a dimension, you're talking about a God. To the third dimension, if your 5th dimensional self were to appear in all of his or her glory, you would be on your knees looking God in the face. It would be such a powerful being. But when you can get out of the third dimensional distortion of it, and start to upload yourself into that and allow that to download into you, then your history goes away. All of the pain goes away. And so what you must learn to do now is first off, just trust and believe that your higher dimensional self exists. Your higher dimensional self is a being of light. So when we talk about working with beings of light, we're talking about working with beings that are on a higher dimensional level. For instance, some of you have been on my channel long enough, you know that a while back I had a fiancée soulmate, fell in love with her, and she died on me, and it was extremely traumatic and horrific. I have since communicated with her. She has come back. She has now reincarnated. I am in contact with her higher dimensional self. And I forgot where I was going with that. I got lost in that. But the point being is that you have a higher dimensional self. And every time I've interacted with my higher dimensional self, I've also talked to my dead mother, my dead father, my dead sister. I've talked with all of them. And what ends up happening is that connecting with their higher dimensional self actually erases my past with them. So the karma and the past and the drama that has had such a powerful influence on defining who I am, my limitations, those are going away. They're disappearing. And the only thing that's left to identify with is my higher dimensional self that doesn't have that history. My fifth dimensional self doesn't have a history where he grew up in Southern California and was picked on as a kid and was abused by his older brother and was devalued and demeaned by his dysfunctional parents. He's not limited by that because that's not his history. That's my 3D history, but even that is gone. It's getting deleted. So if you want to delete all of the things that are keeping you, and listen, I work with clients, and I've a lot of clients have moved on. I'm moving to a different place, so the universe is shifting things around. Some of them I'm really glad, and thank you for your work and congratulations, and it was great working with you. But there's been clients in the past that have left me, not because of anything other than they weren't able to get past their limitations. They weren't able to get past their history of themselves. And so understand that it's like gravity. Your history is going to want to pull you back. Your 3D unconscious brain thinks that you need your history to survive. And having your history erased feels like death. So those of you going through this, there's a comment somebody left, as they're going through this shift, they find themselves weeping and feeling sad. That's accurate because that was your identity. That was who you are. That's what grounded you. That's what gave you an existence. That's what made you, gave you the ability to survive, and to have that go away is very sad. But it's like gravity. It's going to want to pull you back. So when you do the interdimensional meditation, which I teach up here at thunderwizard.com, there's a couple of free interdimensional meditations. You don't have to do my version. There's plenty out there. I'm teaching you what I know. But when you do the interdimensional meditations, what has to happen is when you come back into your 3D self, you then have to act from your higher dimensional self, which means you're going to take actions which are totally opposite to what your 3D self has been programmed to do. Your 3D self has been programmed to please the narrative so that you can be loved by the world and be accepted. We've seen what's happened. The past 3 years, we have seen what's happened to people who have said, it's not about me, it's about the collective, it's about the whole, and I'm accepting, and I'm not into this conspiracy theory. Now we see what's happening to them. And it's only the beginning. They're going to be torn to shreds. I wish no ill will on anybody, but it's a fact. I can't talk about it on this channel because I'll get blocked, but trust me, this is only the beginning. So your narrative is who you were, I'm good at this, I'm bad at that, I'm afraid of that, I'm this and that. Well, when you come back from the fifth dimension after interacting with your higher dimensional God self, and you come back, it's going to be challenging to integrate yourself to who you were. So you can kickstart the process by taking actions that go in the opposite direction. You go against your fears. You act in spite of your fears. And you continue to trust and download more and more of that fifth dimensional self that you are. And not only does your life change, but reality itself changes. Don't believe me? Again, look at the Mandela effect. History is changing. The world I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. The world I grew up in, Kennedy was shot right after I was born in a 4-seater sedan. That apparently didn't happen. The Black Tom event never happened. The Earth was in the Sagittarius arm. All of those historical facts of my reality, and many people listening, no longer exists. So when you feel the pull of your fears, your guilt, your shame, that pulls you back into those feelings of I can't accomplish this, I can't do that, I'm not worthy of this, I don't deserve that, then you take the opposite action. You first go to the fifth dimension and you listen to your higher dimensional self. You trust it. Everything in you is going to want to gaslight you out of it. I've only shared about 5%, in my books, what my higher self has said to me and what higher dimensional beings have told me about who I am. I've only shared a little bit, and even that is absolutely unbelievable. But I hadn't even begun to tell you that. And the reason that it's important to know is that in the fifth dimension, being a god is normal. Imagine, living amongst gods and being an even, more powerful god than the other gods. Imagine having a god coming to you and saying, you're this amazing god. That's what's been happening to me. I'm not unique. Other people are having the same experience. You're going to have your own experience. Believe me, you're going to get what you need. But the point is, you have to take actions. You have to go contrary to your fears. You have to. Because if you go to the fifth dimension and you see your higher self, and instead of acting on it, you act on your three-dimensional history and your fears, it's just going to prolong the process. It's still going to happen. It's just going to take a little longer. It's going to be a little more painful. Anyway, I'm starting to babble, but I think you get where I'm going with this. So I recommend you get my book, Interdimensional Revolution, which you can find on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can go to audiobooks.thunderwizard.com to see all my audiobooks. A lot of great ones there, like Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward and The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. If you do go there, be sure if you're in another country, you click on the U.S. site so you can get to it. You can also go to michaelwilliamdenny.com to see all of my books. And you can find it here, courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my courses. And the thunderwizard.com is the elite package, and it's also the least expensive. For the price of a video game, you get access to the 3-tiered energy practice that you won't find anywhere. This is a combination of the most powerful energy practices in the history of the human race. Nobody's ever done it before. I know I sound grandiose, it's just true. You get Qigong, the most powerful Qigong on the planet, coming from the Mao Shan Taoist tradition of demon fighters, sorcerers, and wizards. You have Kundalini Yoga, which is the fifth dimensional energy of consciousness that the Indian yogis discovered. And then you have the heart-mind energy, the Shin energy, again, of the Mao Shan Taoist, which is lightning energy of the heart. And this lightning energy of the heart, when it is released through your body, destroys negativity, literally gives you the ability to kill demons with your bare hands. All of these three, you just go to thunderwizard.com and you press play on the different practices that I have. You will be doing all three of those. Follow my instructions. It can take you to the fifth dimension. Then start doing the interdimensional meditation course where you can go directly to 5D, and then come back into 3D and start acting from your higher dimensional self. Start going against the programming. Start deleting and erasing your negative, fearful programming through your positive, contrary actions, and your life will absolutely transform, I guarantee it. And your reality and the reality of people around you will begin to transform. I guarantee it. Everybody who's followed all of my directions and done them consistently, their lives have completely transformed. Of course, you got to keep doing it, but I can at least point you in the direction and hopefully keep encouraging you as I continue to learn. So that's it for me, my friends. I wish you all the best. That's it. I'll look forward to talking to you next time. 3D is done, so it's time to get with the program. Okay, talk to you soon.